Hi everyone, Jane Monreal here with you. It is 9 o'clock on Thursday morning. You're watching Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. We want to start with some breaking news. If you are just waking up and turning on your Roku or your Fire TV on the WCNC Plus app, we appreciate you downloading the app. This is where we bring you the latest news and feeds that are coming into our newsroom. This is a picture right now of officials on the ground in India, where just before 5 o'clock our time here, Air India, the country's pretty much their landmark carrier, I should say, crashed shortly after taking off. This is in the Ahmedabad airport, a major city there. It was bound for London with 242 people on board. We apparently lost that feed there, but 242 people on board crashed shortly after takeoff, and it is assumed that there are no apparent survivors. So we are following that story for you right now. In the meantime, we are also trying to get some pictures of what's happening in San Antonio. Major storm there coming through, and there was reports of flooding and some damage because of a storm. But let's take a deep breath and take you into the Queen City, where things are quiet, calm, hazy sunshine, I would call it this morning right now, wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
All right, yeah, Chris Mulcahy is in the Live Impact studio joining us now. I say calm with a tone of for now.
Well, yeah, the storm chances return. Yeah, but no, what an active morning. And also yesterday, you also had the Kilauea volcano over in Hawaii.
That's right. Yes, we do have that right now.
Yeah. So, hey, let's go over there first.
Please.
Okay. So yesterday, officially, it was jumping up to about 330 feet. Ooh. So that was quite the height there from. This is a shield volcano, by the way. It's one of the lower volcanoes, and you may not know this, but Kilauea is actually the most active volcano in the world, and the most active one historically is actually one by the name of Stromboli.
Really?
Yeah,
Sounds
it's named
good.
Stromboli. For about 2,400 years, it's had on and off active periods of different eruptions. And this one that you're looking at right now is actually, yesterday was its 25th eruption since December 23rd.
Wow.
So, and I was looking at this and was like, wow, that must be a lot. Well, technically not. Whenever it's really in its active zone, it was from 1983 to 2018. So it's a 5-year span, Kilauea was actively erupting, allowing lava flows, stuff like that. You don't always see the big eruptions like what we saw yesterday. The record was actually 1959, was up to 1,900 feet. So this is pretty typical, but over the last 200 years, it averages about 2 to 3 eruptions. So if you look at that historically, yes, this 25 over the last 6 months is pretty epic, but it just shows that how active this situation is. And oftentimes when you have a shield volcano that's the most shallow one, they have a chance to go on for longer eruptions over a longer period of time. So at first when I saw this, I'm like, oh, look at all those city lights. Nope, that's fire and magma
Hopefully
and
it's
lava.
not close to the city.
Yeah, hopefully not.
I remember the last time this happened, they said there's no threat to public because it's in its own park.
Okay.
Like it's
So they've known this then since the 80s.
Yeah. I believe the stat that I saw, it takes up about 14% of the islands there. So they know well. It's like, okay, there's a lot going on there for 200 years. Maybe let's not build our whatever there.
Creating more topography.
Exactly. Well, yeah, think about it. That's Hawaii happened, so it's going to continue doing it. And old Stromboli, that I'm never going to forget the name.
Sounds good for lunch.
Yeah, is at a code yellow, so not really too bad. Yeah, I know. When we were looking at the stats, again, I just became a partial volcano expert because I was really interested in this morning. So that's why I wanted to share those stats with you. Never in person, no.
No.
Me neither.
No.
I want to go. I just want to see it.
I know.
In Hawaii?
Yeah.
Or any volcano?
Any, really. I've never been close to one or anything like that.
Well, I've seen a dormant Mount St. Helen.
Oh, sure.
Yeah,
Okay.
but
Right,
that's
there's
literally
that.
just a mountain.
Right.
Yeah, so
I saw the
sometimes
smoke from, in the Philippines, but I was unable to fly because it was erupting at the time.
interesting.
Yeah, domestically. I wasn't unable to fly to one of the other islands. But yeah, that was my experience with a volcano. So now we see one again in Hawaii.
Yep. Now you know, most active one in the world, right there. So that's all the stats I have
facts.
learned over the last 2 hours about Kilauea.
Very interesting. All right. So it is pretty decent for our area right now. if you wanna
I'm
get
only
out.
talking about volcanoes today. I'm
Oh,
sorry, it's in
okay.
my
All right,
contract.
just
No,
not a
I'm
volcano
joking.
show.
I'm joking
Thanks.
with you, of course. No, today is a great day, but there's a little bit of doom here, and I don't want to alarm
Uh-oh.
anyone. There's a very large insect
What is that?
It's about to take over the town of Monroe. I don't know why I'm being so calm about this, but impending doom. So if you live in Monroe, this is probably about the size of 2 city buses, the way I'm probably putting it into perspective. But we'll just talk about temperatures anyways and pretend this isn't a big issue. Or maybe it's just a regular-sized bug on the lens. So yeah, no, this is actually a wasp nest that has been bothering us all morning. Yeah. So there you go. Yeah, nope, they're on and off. And this one right here especially has been hanging out either in the bottom right or the top left.
This is his home now.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. This is his home, and all of a sudden it's like, hey, I heard that we were streaming.
I want airtime.
17 hours a day here
Yeah.
on WCNC Plus.
This is why you keep us on.
Exactly.
See this.
Yeah. Now I usually don't get to spend too much time on this, so this is not. Oh, and now he's gone. He's off to go kikiing. Right? Dad, you use it right? Hey. Yeah. We are learning. We are living. 79 degrees is our current temperature right now in Charlotte. So I do see a subtle change to the forecast, and I really noticed at the end of our 8 o'clock forecast. So let me backtrack, but I'll get to this real quick. 86 degrees is our high today. Yesterday was 89. So you could say today is a cooler day. That's misleading. If you look at the record books, you could say, yes, you went 89 to 86. But we actually are going to feel like 90 to 91 through the duration of the afternoon for about 3 hours. Yesterday, 88 felt like 89, 89 felt like 90. There wasn't a big difference for our heat index. Today, it really makes the difference. And I think that we even have a shot at some of the mid-90s for how we feel heading into the weekend. So temperatures will trend down a little bit in the near term. I just needed to mention that for the at least near future. But here's the new change that I wanted to talk about. That area of yellow. So most of the morning I've been saying, hey, it's this time of the year since it's so hot and humid. Even if there's not a designated severe threat from the National Weather Service, you still have a chance for wet microbursts, and that is the 90% of all wind damage we have is a wet microburst. Simply put, that's when you have a lot of heavy rain that's much cooler that eventually drops out of the cloud, and that provides gusty winds, and it could be severe wind gusts that come from that. So that's how most of our wind damage happens. Pretty much it gives all the energy, rushes it out, and it's very isolated. So we do have a chance for that. I think it's primarily west of 321. So this little yellow line would be where we have the chance for the stronger storms. All of us have a chance for thunderstorms in general. I think primarily this is going to be late afternoon to the evening. Charlotte, I think you actually have your best chance for storms. Not saying you don't see an isolated one before this, but more widespread activity really closer to between about 7 and midnight, because notice all that rain kind of gloms together. I don't think you really have a severe weather threat at that point. After sunset, that kind of starts to wind down, but you could see a decent amount of rain that comes with this system. So I just needed to mention that. For our Guy Roofing 7-day forecast, we are down to 83, still feeling like the upper 80s on Friday. We have the upper 80s Saturday and Sunday, and then on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, we're back up into the lower 90s. So I wanted to go there. We're going to go through all of our rain chances here in just one moment. Okay. I think there's also a chance for a little bit of localized flooding that are going to come from some of these guys. I think the biggest issue that I'm really seeing here is that you're going to have a lot of these slow-moving storms, and that slow movement is just going to really could dump up to 1 to 2 inches of rain per day, but it's very isolated just depending where you are. Now I'm stalling because I can't see it because the thing's so tiny over here, so give me a sec. You guys talk amongst yourselves while I can see what's going on here.
Oh, so I have something to say. So.
Yes.
You mentioned yesterday, hey, if you want to be in our forecast, let me know.
Oh.
Right?
Yeah.
Did you put a video?
Sturdivant,
Oh, okay.
Nick Sturdivant, I told him your offer. And now Nick is very opinionated about the forecast. He always
Okay.
He turned his own thing.
He did. It's either Nick's pick. He didn't want to do pick of the week because that's your thing.
Oh, no, okay.
Nick's pick or Nick's ick.
Ooh, I like the Nick's ick.
Right?
Okay, yeah.
You
First
guys
off,
we gotta get him in front of a
He
green screen.
debuted it on Linear yesterday on
did he?
WCNC Charlotte at 4.
okay, Nick's ick.
The room was a little lukewarm on it.
What? I loved it. I was
Oh,
all here for it.
we are hot over here.
we are
Okay.
I like
we're the
that.
cheerleaders,
All right.
though.
Okay.
We're all for it.
Yeah.
Woo! Nick's
All right,
ick.
well, next week on here, I'm going to
It's
ask
gonna
for
be
Nick's
icky
ick. I love that.
Right?
Yeah, I'll get with our ick management
correspondent.
team. Yeah, our correspondent, and on Friday, so tomorrow, and then we'll really drive it home. First off, I need to ask Digital for a PNG.
Well, he wants
of
to
Nick.
do a frowny face, 2 thumbs down.
2 thumbs down, so we need
Excellent.
that. Okay, that's easy.
Yeah.
Because I told you that we can make the little people, so I'll get him in front of the green screen maybe today. That's awesome. Okay, it's happening, y'all. All right, I like that. Also, this really helps me because I've been what's the right words here? Criticized when I've said the worst day of the week because I wasn't supposed to be opinionated. So at least if Nick is,
if he weighs in,
it's on the outside, which I do understand because literally I'm just like, oh, this is a horrible day. It's really rainy and dreary. There are a select few people that's their jam.
Yeah.
I like them every once in a while because that gives me excuse not to do anything and I get to binge watch what I want.
That's the only reason.
Okay, thank you for always letting me get off topic because that's the way my brain works on here. This is the point that I wanted to make. So this right here is a 60-hour rainfall estimate. Don't do the math. That's 2.5 days. So 60 hours showing that we are seeing general greens and blues here. I took the numbers off because I think that just really convolutes things, but this is really what we're going to have for the forecast. Most of us will see up to a ½ inch of rain on and off because there's going to be days you see it, days you don't. But the ones that see the heavier thunderstorms, the ones that see the rain that kind of sits over an area, because we don't have a front that is pushing things out. We don't really have a driving force, so they kind of have a mind of their own. That's maddening for me as a meteorologist because I can just say, hey, it's going to rain at some point this evening. You might see, it might not. Good luck. I can't really guide you. I can just say the environment is there. But notice how you're seeing a lot of different purples and reds and oranges. If you look up at that top key, that's showing anywhere from 1 to 4 inches of rain could fall in isolated areas. So we will have some localized floodings. I think at times you might have your gutters that are overwhelmed. I literally went up after a rain and used one of my little grabbers to get some leaves out because all of a sudden I was like, what's going on on up here. So maybe you want to check the gutters, especially with this pretty active pattern, because depending where they are, some of us will have some drainage issues, some large puddles. Some people will have the wet shoe that they don't know what to do with for the day. Just letting you know that's the general norm. It's the worst. That was me a couple weeks ago. That's why I'm speaking from experience, especially when it's that submerged that reaches the sock.
Yeah,
don't get
you
me.
don't have the spit. Yeah.
Well, don't be that guy. Look before you step, especially out of the car, and don't be in a hurry. Stop and smell the raindrops. Here we go. Our future cast. I showed you this briefly, but again, we do have a chance for a stronger storm to the west. We're seeing a lot more scattered activity, and then we start to see it really take over and start to become a little bit more widespread and spread out right between about 8 and 9, and that could last till midnight. There's also a chance that we have some morning rain tomorrow as another system rolls in. Today's going to be a partly sunny day, so we have more clouds and sunshine. Tomorrow, I think you have a partly sunny to a mostly cloudy one, but you see a lot more storms. I think you have more of scattered thunderstorms throughout the day, and then they'll start to wind down after sunset. And Saturday, dry for most of the day before 2. I'll say it again. I'll repeat myself. Better chance for storms in the mountains, though, earlier in the afternoon. And I think most of the activity doesn't arrive until late afternoon heading into the evening. So good news if you have any earlier plans. Just wanted to get that out. So our weekend forecast, I think the same thing goes for Father's Day. Earlier, the better. Some of us might be wanting to grill out later in the day. We'll just let you know each hour as you approach 6 o'clock, it's going to be a better chance for an isolated scatter shower and thunderstorm. I was also talking about last week about our chance for our first heat wave, and I 100% think that is going to be a possibility. We have 92, 93, 93, 91.
Wow.
The definition of a heat wave changes per weather office and per the time of the year. But most of them, the biggest consensus I have is when you have 3 days or more at 90 degrees plus, or 3 days or more that is abnormally hot. And that's going to fit the mold for either one of those cases, because we've only hit 190-degree day, as we know, this past Saturday. Well, now they're officially here. So June doing as June does. Just wanted to let you know that 83 tomorrow, even though it's going to be a humid one, is still going to be 10 degrees cooler potentially than what we have next Thursday and Friday.
The heat is on.
Sizzling.
Yes, we are. All right. Good stuff, Chris. Thank you so much.
You're very
coming
welcome.
into the Live Impact studio with today's fun fact, volcanoes, etc.
Wait, and yeah, I'm sorry, right here. I was seeing some things. I also was messaging Nick to try to get on our ick factor.
To get
so
the Nick's
yeah,
ick. Yep.
So we got that on, and
All right, we're gonna-
and there it is. Digital says you asked for a Nick PNG. Guess what, pal? A big shout out
Oh my
to
gosh.
my man, Mr. Lee. Thank you so much.
Hank
I do
Lee on
appreciate
it.
it. No, Hank, that's why I was looking. I thought that he was going to do it because I know how he does it. But he's one of our lead digital team members, and I already got a Nick PNG, so I'm going to go and make the graphic right now.
All right. We'll debut it here on Live Impact News.
Coming tomorrow.
With Chris Mulcahy. Thank you very much.
Of course.
We will stay prepared for that, I guess. Right now, we are getting ready for an interview about tech and the local economy and how that affects things. But I do want to show you the latest live pictures right now. This is in India, as I told you here, top of the 9 o'clock as we came up on Live Impact News here from the studio. This is Air India after crashing hours ago, about 5 o'clock our time, with over 200 people on board, including crew, 242. Presumed no survivors. It took off from Islamabad airport, and it was heading to London. It was heading to London Gatwick Airport. The investigation continuing, and we are hearing NBC News reporting that there are a few people on the ground that were also either hurt or killed. So we are trying to confirm up numbers, but the latest information here, Air India crashing with 242 souls on board. No Americans is my understanding. One Canadian citizen and dozens of British citizens on that flight. That is a major plane. It's a Dreamliner up from one of their big planes leaving Islamabad. That is a major airport there in India, taking off for London. Cause for the plane to crash is unknown at this time. But you can see a lot of people there on the ground, and we will continue to monitor things there from India. Okay. In the meantime, let's get over now to what we want to address this morning, and this is about fears of recession and the economic volatility, inflation. We're hearing it in the headlines for months, if not years now. But new research suggesting the tech sector is not just weathering this storm, it is actually driving significant job growth and economic stability across the country. A new study finding that tech, information, and e-commerce sector, or TIE, as researchers are calling it, is leading the way as a good source for good jobs, good paying jobs, especially relevant here in Charlotte, where we have seen some remarkable tech growth. So joining us this morning right now, breaking down these findings and what they mean for our economy is Dr. Michael Mandel. He's a vice president and chief economist at the Progressive Policy Institute in Washington, D.C. Thanks, Dr. Mandel, for joining us this morning.
Good morning.
So what is driving this trend of the Thai sector outpacing other industries?
So this has been going on for a while at this point. We look back in before the pandemic, and we found that since 2019 that the Thai sector, the tech, info, e-commerce sector, jobs grew by 18% compared to only 4% for the rest of the private sector. We also found that that on the local level, in states and regions like Charlotte, okay, which have a strong Thai sector, they've also tended to have strong economic growth across the rest of the economy. And we concluded from this that having a strong Thai sector also provides some measure of protection against economic uncertainty, okay, which is, as you pointed out, so important these days.
What does this suggest then about Charlotte's area, the economic resilience and the ripple effect that the tech sector has on just the local economy?
Well, when we put together our ranking of sort of counties around the country, okay, the Mecklenburg County showed up on our, in our top 25 counties, which was really terrific. And the numbers are fantastic for the area. Okay, in Mecklenburg County, tech, info, e-commerce jobs rose by 38% since 2019, compared to 8% for the rest of the private sector. That's fantastic, given what's going on in the country. It suggests going forward that you have some measure of protection or resilience against economic uncertainty. There's no guarantees, of course, but the tech, info, and e-commerce companies are investing hundreds of billions of dollars in the U.S. on data centers, artificial intelligence, and cloud computing. And we know that with this investment, there's jobs.
All right, let's talk about the jobs themselves. When we talk about the Thai sector, what kind of positions are we looking at? Are we looking specifically software development?
Oh, we're looking at a whole range of different things. We've got software development, we've got cybersecurity, we've got data center construction, we've got e-commerce fulfillment. One of the amazing things about the Thai sector is that it encompasses a very wide range of skilled and less skilled positions that that makes it a very attractive proposition for a region.
And then looking ahead, Dr. Mandel, as we continue with this economic uncertainty, what should communities like Mecklenburg County be thinking about to attract and retain these kinds of positions and job resources?
The key is for policymakers to have a positive attitude towards innovation and investment in technology and investment in people. Okay, that's how America is going to move forward.
I mean, yeah, that's fantastic. Just a general note. So for individuals considering these career opportunities, whether in tech or living and working in tech-heavy communities, what should people be looking for?
Looking for the future. I mean, people are a little bit sort of worried these days, as they should be, because there's so much uncertainty. But we know that the investment is happening. And if the investment is happening, you should gravitate towards the investment, because that's where the jobs are going to be.
All right. It sounds very encouraging here for the Charlotte, Mecklenburg County areas. Dr. Mandel talking about the tech industry, the boom, and the impact that's kind of been with us for a while now, but now we're really hopefully seeing the fruits of that labor.
Absolutely. If you want to sort of read more, you can go to our website, www.progressivepolicy.org.
All right. Very good. Thank you for joining us this morning. Good information. Very encouraging for us.
Thank you.
All right, Dr. Mandel joining us via Zoom as we bring you back out here now to the Live Impact Studio on WCNC Plus. Want to get you caught up with the latest from Washington because of protests happening in LA, happening once again, more deployments of National Guards to other states now, and protests planned for across the country this weekend. Let's check in with Chris Pallone in Washington with the latest.
With ICE protests erupting across the country, this one in Seattle, where overnight police arrested several demonstrators. The epicenter remains Los Angeles, where thousands of National Guard troops are keeping watch and 700 Marines are poised to join them. Democrats on Capitol Hill are questioning the president's motives.
Our Marines train for combat in the Indo-Pacific, not for securing the streets of Los Angeles.
President Trump insisting protests against ongoing immigration raids would have been much worse if he hadn't acted.
They didn't have the police to handle it. The police were asking us to come in.
State and local leaders say the situation was under control and accuse the president of manufacturing a crisis.
Maybe we are part of a national experiment to determine how far the federal government can go in reaching in and taking over power.
The rare military activation in an American city comes as Washington prepares for a big show of military might as well. A parade celebrating the 250th anniversary of the Army Saturday on President Trump's 79th birthday. With a price tag of up to $45 million, even some Republicans wonder if it's worth it.
Never been a big fan of goose-stepping soldiers in big tanks and missiles rolling down the street. So if you ask me, I wouldn't have done it.
I would save the money, but it's, if the president wants to have a parade, he's the president and I'm not.
The parade will feature more than 60 tanks rolling down Constitution Avenue and 6,000 soldiers marching along. Chris Pallone, NBC News, Washington.
We're going to take a listen in now to live footage that is coming in. It is a little blurred, as you can see here, but this is from India shortly after the crash, a plane crash, Air India, with 242 people on board. Let's listen in.
The Home Minister is also coming to inspect the site right now. He will be coming here. We'll go through another round of inspection. We'll talk to some of the people who are here and all the teams that are here. And then we are having one meeting at the Circuit House. Annex. So we will be discussing some more things there. Maybe once we go through all these discussions, I can give you some more information. But if you ask me, then I'm just thinking about the families and the passengers who are there. It's a great loss. Yes, it is. It is very. Yes. Very sad to know that Vijay Rupani ji, Chief Minister, was also there, and like you were mentioning, other nationals were also there, children were also there. I would only say that each and every life is precious to us. Each and everyone is a very important person to us. So it's an incident which has shaken the nation also. Everyone has expressed their grief.
सीरियसली इस घटना को लिया जा रहा है क्योंकि इतनी टेक्नोलॉजी होने के बावजूद इस तरह की घटना होना तो वो एक अपने आप में बड़े सवाल का है.
Yes. I'll only give one line to what you have asked right now. We are going to do a fair and thorough investigation. We are not going to spare anyone. We are not going to leave any stone unturned. We'll do properly according to the protocol, and we are going to go to the depth of why this incident has happened. That much I can tell you now. बस अभी इतना काम.
Thank you. मेरा कैप पड़े यार. ओके. एक सेकंड मेरा केबल भाई. केबल पाजी कैप. So you are going to stay here, sir?
I'll see according to the work that is going on. मेरा डिपार्टमेंट. हाँ जी इसीलिए.
अनफॉर्चुनेट है सर, किसी ने सोचा भी नहीं था। एक्चुअली हमने बताया ना पहले यही था कि फायर इंसिडेंट हुआ है और यहाँ पर सब दौड़ के आ गए और जब रिवर फ्रंट से हम लोग आगे पता चला मेरा ये था कि भाई जगह दे मुझे, जगह दे जाने दे सर को। अभी नेट ही नहीं चल रहा।
You are watching live on Impact News footage and live interviews coming into the WCNC Charlotte newsroom of officials there gathering around, apparently a number of officials, getting some information after a plane with 230 passengers and 12 crew members for Air India crashed just shortly after takeoff, leaving Ahmedabad Thursday morning, about 5 o'clock our time. So you can see it is daylight there in India, but we are just monitoring things here and listening in live and gathering some more information. So we will continue to just sort of dip in and out of footage as we see fit, but you can see that it is just sort of rough and unedited raw video right now here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. All right, so as we bring you back out here now to the Live Impact Studio on WCNC Plus, we appreciate you joining us here every day. If you have the WCNC app on your Roku or Fire TV or even Apple TV, we appreciate you downloading it and telling your friends and family, because this is what we get to monitor, or just what's happening around the world and in your community. And we had special guests as well, as you heard about 15 minutes ago, someone about the progressive policy from Washington, D.C., speaking on the tech industry and how it is affecting and impacting in a positive way local communities, especially Charlotte, Mecklenburg County, because we are in tech heavy, if you will. All right, also want to let you know that at 6:30 every night, Chief Meteorologist Brad Panovich joins us here now from the Live Impact Studio starting this week, talking about everything weather, and that's whether we have severe weather or not. And there's some interesting topics. He knows so much about so much.
That's what I said to Dick yesterday. He knows a little about absolutely everything.
Yes, where, some of us, I know very little about a lot of things.
Yeah, right.
He knows a lot about a lot of things.
That's why I say his head's a Library of Congress. He knows a little bit about absolutely everything.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. Okay, if you were with us yesterday as well, you might have heard that Beach Boys, one of the original singers, Brian Wilson, passed away at the age of 82 years old. One of the original writers, founders, an influence on American genre, that music. And of course, we had the Beach Boys in Charlotte last weekend, of course, without Mr. Wilson. But our Vanessa Rufus did have an interview yesterday talking about someone who lives locally, David Beard, who lives in Charlotte, and the influence of the Beach Boys music on him. This is that interview previously recorded that you would have seen yesterday on WCNC Plus. We'll play that for you right now here on Live Impact News.
We've also, of course, got big news from the music world, sad news. Brian Wilson, of course, a pioneer in pop, leader of the Beach Boys, one of the co-founders of the Beach Boys, has passed away at the age of 82. A family did not specify a cause of death here, only posting on Instagram, quote, "We are heartbroken to announce that our beloved father, Brian Wilson, has passed away. We are at a loss for words right now. Please respect our privacy at this time as our family is grieving. We realize that we are sharing our grief with the world." So that's the statement they shared. And while they did not specify a cause of death, we know that at least as of last year, there were legal representatives who said that Mr. Wilson had been suffering from a dementia-like disorder. They called it a major neurocognitive disorder, and they suggested that he be placed in a conservatorship. So, of course, more on that to come. In the meantime, today, folks across the world and here in the Carolinas too are reflecting on Mr. Wilson's legacy and really just the importance that the music of the Beach Boys has had on American culture. One of those folks, who's certainly reflecting today, we've got, I guess we could say, one of the biggest fans in the entire world, maybe. We've got David Beard, who's a local gentleman who also happens to run Endless Summer Quarterly, which is the official Beach Boys fan publication. And David, you've been doing this since the 1990s, and you are also involved with co-producing one of the more recent new recordings with the band, which is super special. And so I hope that we can talk about that a bit as we go on throughout this conversation. But I guess first and foremost, how are you feeling today? What are your thoughts as we've learned now of the passing of Mr. Wilson?
Well, it's really unique. It's such a beautiful day outside today. When I went out and got in my car and was driving, I just started thinking about California, even though I'm in the Carolinas. I was just driving along and just kind of reflecting on what a beautiful day it is. And it just made me appreciate the music of the Beach Boys that much more.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly think about, the summer vibes, right? That's just like the iconic sound. And I think, when we think about summer, there are so many people who think about that music and the iconic voices too. And yeah, I mean, just a lot of people thinking probably too, just about how this group kind of revolutionized and added in special ways to music culture here in the U.S. I guess what made you such a huge fan of the Beach Boys? I mean, I have to imagine it's some of that sound, but what really drew you to this group?
Well, oddly enough, a music duo by the name of Jan and Dean. I don't know if many people know who they are anymore, but Jan and Dean were very similar to the Beach Boys in that they did car songs and surfing songs and songs about girls and going down to the beach. And Jan and Dean were actually a doo-wop duo out of California. They would play Dick Clark's American Bandstand when that was still based in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And Jan and Dean, because they were first, they had several doo-wop songs that the Beach Boys picked up on right away. And you hear that replicated in the Beach Boys' first song ever, Surfin', with the balm, dip, 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 dip. They took that, they kind of borrowed that from Jan and Dean, and they became fast friends. They would do shows together out there, and lo and behold, I discovered Jan and Dean through the television movie Dead Man's Curve, which aired, I discovered it sometime in early '80, I think is when I saw it on its second airing. And it was about this culture, these two guys who met in high school, and they went on to create this music. And there's a moment in that TV special where the actors playing Jan and Dean were standing at the shore with the surfboards, and the one playing Jan says to the one playing Dean, "This would sound so great on tape," and they end up cutting right to them in the studio with a montage of them in the studio and people surfing, and they're singing the song Surfin', which is a Beach Boys song. Now back then in 1980, I'll remind people that there was no internet. You kind of had to really, if you really found you liked something, you could go to the record store and you'd have to buy books. And I did that, and I quickly discovered the Jan and Dean anthology album, and it was a 2-record set. It had a booklet inside, and it was all this stuff written about this guy named Brian Wilson. And then I'm looking at the credits of the songs, and lo and behold, the song Surf City, which was a #1 hit, Jan and Dean's only #1 hit, was co-written by this fellow named Brian Wilson. And that kind of led me down the rabbit hole. I just thought, well, man, I love this song, Surf City. I like this song, Drag City. He also co-wrote that. Let me find out more about these Beach Boy guys. And then it was those early 60s hits that kind of sucked me in. And then from there, by the time I was in my early 20s, and I discovered Pet Sounds. And when I had listened to Pet Sounds a couple of times on vinyl, on record, and it didn't really hit me the way that it eventually would. One day I was in my car, and I had Pet Sounds on in a cassette in my car, and it just hit me like a ton of bricks. I suddenly was transformed everything that was on every one of those songs. Wouldn't it be nice? God only knows. I just wasn't made for these times. Caroline, no. All that music suddenly kind of just enveloped me. And I was just changed forever. There was something different there. There was something significant, musically significant, that I didn't hear anywhere else. It didn't matter whether it was a pop song or a fun song or a surfing song. It wasn't so much what the music was about. It's what the music conveyed in the way that it felt when you listened to it.
Yeah, I think about, the versatility of the songs, and some of my personal favorites. Like, it's hard to pick, and I feel like I loved all the songs that you just listed. But I think about like Good Vibrations. That always just makes me feel happy. But then I think about In My Room, which is just so, I don't know, wistful, and I don't know, but I love that one as well. And I think, kind of to your point about the emotion and speaking to the human experience, and maybe even the American experience too, of just being in your room and thinking.
Yeah, and Brian's genius. One of the things, I'm not someone who always would use, through the 30 plus years that I've been doing Endless Summer Quarterly, I'm not that prone to using the word genius with Brian. But one of the things he did that no one else has ever done, and even Paul McCartney has bought a copy of Pet Sounds for every one of his children, because Paul McCartney has even said publicly, you're not musically educated until you listen to Pet Sounds. So there'd be a song, I think it's Don't Talk, Put Your Head on My Shoulders, which has got beautiful string arrangements going on behind it. And Brian would purposely, if the song was in a certain key, he would purposely put in a major right at a certain moment in the song, just so that your ear, even though you wouldn't realize what you were hearing, the emphasis of what he was singing with the lyrics would be conveyed with just that key change for just that moment. And so he would go from a minor key to a major key, just to kind of and inherently communicate to the listener something different just occurred.
Yeah,
that matched the lyrical intention.
Yeah, a very, very amateur musician here, but being a former orchestra nerd, feeling, minor keys, that kind of melancholy. I get what you're saying, but the major keys kind of sweeten, bring a little bit more brightness, happiness. So I get what you're saying right there.
Yeah, he and then you talk about, and he had so many. He was very lucky also. I want to point that out. Brian was very fortunate in that he had, in the very beginning, when they first started out, he had four voices. He had his cousin Mike Love, his younger brother Carl, their buddy Al Jardine, and Dennis, the other brother, Dennis Wilson. He was just kind of a very high energy guy. But Brian's very quickly, because this is true, and it's kind of hard to this day for me to wrap my mind around. The Beach Boys released 12 albums in 4 years. 12 albums. And that to me is astonishing. So they went very quickly through that progress of really simple, fun songs to really developed, meaningful songs. And so Brian worked with a number of lyricists. Roger Christian mostly did the Car songs. Gary Usher worked on Car songs and some of the other melancholy songs like In My Room. But his cousin Van Dyke Parks would work with Brian on the Smile sessions. And Tony Asher, who is a jingle writer that Brian befriended, worked with Brian on most of Pet Sounds. But the guy that who's going into the Songwriters Hall of Fame tomorrow is his cousin Mike Love. Brian got in the year 2000. Mike's going in tomorrow to join him. And I just think it's so fitting that this is happening now, because what Mike and Brian did together, you can Google that collaboration and the songs they wrote together, the number, the songs that have impacted our lives. There was something so special and unique, and I think Good Vibrations is the prime example of a song that just changed everything. It was released in October of '66, and it when I listen to it, even today, I'm reminded of its cultural significance. Not just, oh, wow, this is a really cool song. It's the cultural significance and how Brian managed to just introduce, that's jazz. If you listen to it, it's jazz. And so he's got jazz, rhythm and blues, doo-wop, all in one song. and he took it, made it 3 minutes and 35 seconds, and he released it to the world. And Mike, with his quick adaptability to what Brian was pursuing, that I just think to this day, I think Good Vibrations defines an era and defines a culture in music.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely iconic. You just referenced this, the Hall of Fame, and I know that was the latest issue that y'all just put out with Endless Summer Quarterly, so folks can certainly check out more there. There you go. Do you think you plan to have any sort of special editions or special updates now that we've learned the news of today?
Oh yeah. One of the things that I've been doing that I started at the winter edition of last year, so it started with this edition and then this edition, is I wanted to get into it. Surprised me, I think last summer. I started looking and I thought, I know Brian did a lot of work outside of the Beach Boys, production-wise and arrangement, and in some cases writing with other artists. And I just was really surprised that there wasn't really a concise, when I went and Googled, you can find anything these days. I was really surprised to learn that there just wasn't that much out there for us to kind of glean from, to learn. So I kind of set about interviewing, number one, people who are still here. And were there. So I ended up interviewing a woman named Cheryl Pomeroy. She was in the group Bob and Sherry. Bob and Sherry were the first thing that Brian produced in October of '63, if I'm remembering correctly, or '62. This goes way back. So he was doing things peripherally while he was releasing 12 albums in 4 years. He was also working with other artists. He worked with Glenn Campbell. I recommend people look up on YouTube the song Guess I'm Dumb, which was released in June of '65. It's Glenn Campbell singing it. It's a Glenn Campbell single, but Brian wrote, produced, and arranged it. And it would have ended up on Pet Sounds had it not been for, I think, the title. From my understanding, the group kind of took issue with Brian recording a song called Guess I'm Dumb. So, but Brian just was Brian. Brian was a very creative soul. He was more interested in the exploration of how he could communicate what he was feeling and what he was thinking. And so not only was he so fortunate in that he had the Beach Boys' voices, he was also very fortunate in that he got turned on to the Wrecking Crew through Jan Berry of Jan and Dean. And the Wrecking Crew is kind of a nickname for the best LA studio session musicians of the time, which consisted, I'll leave somebody out accidentally, but there was a lot of them. Glenn Campbell was one, Hal Blaine on drums, Carol Kay, who's going into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame this year. She's a famous bass player. She's on a number, including Good Vibrations, a number of songs. Tommy Tedesco, Don Randy, Tommy Morgan, the list goes on and on. These were the quill of LA musicians, and they ended up getting the nickname The Wrecking Crew because Hal Blaine put out a book called called Becoming the Wrecking Crew, so that's how that moniker kind of stuck. But Brian had them at his disposal because he quit touring in December of '65, so the Beach Boys kept touring as a group and a unit. Brian stayed home. He had these great LA musicians at his disposal. He'd squeeze them into a studio. And in those days, you didn't have Pro Tools or anything like that. You had 8 tracks to work with. And so Brian would have all the musicians next to each other, and the instruments would kind of bleed into the room. So he would have this kind of really full, lovely, cushiony sound, like, God only knows is a perfect example of that, because he had everybody so close to one another, the instruments would kind of bleed. So he had the greatest voices in the industry as far as I'm concerned. I mean, those voices, that blend, I'll remind people that at the end of '66, the Beach Boys were voted the #1 vocal group in Britain over the Beatles. So that's something of significant. Yeah, that's significant. And I think #3 were the Rolling Stones. So the Beach Boys were #1 in Britain over the Beatles. So that vocal blend was unmatched and unparalleled. And Brian had those voices at his disposal to sing kind of his dreams, because whatever he could come up with, the Wrecking Crew helped him. The Beach Boys would come back from touring. They'd go into the studio. He'd play them these incredible tracks, and they would put their voices on them, and you had magic. And to Brian's credit, he always knew. By 65 and 66, he always knew when to listen. He was not a demanding guy. He knew what he wanted. But one of the things I credit him with, if you ever listen to, I'll hold this up. This is the one that came out in '97, but a more recent one came out in 2016. The Beach Boys Pet Sound Sessions box set. There's a whole disc of Brian just working with musicians, and there's moments in songs where they'll make a suggestion to him, and he'll say, "Play that again," or "Play what you're suggesting," and they will play it. And he'd go, "Yeah, let's try it once." And they would try it. And if he liked it, he'd say, "Yeah, let's do that. Okay, let's run it that way." And I think that takes a lot of. So he was never a pushy guy. He understood what he wanted, but he was never pushy, right? He was like a sponge. He wanted to know what. He trusted the people, these great LA musicians. He trusted them. He knew that their suggestions, because they'd been in the industry longer than he had, he knew to trust them. And I think that's a lesson to anybody, that you can, if you surround yourself with great players, let the great players play. Mm-hmm. And he was really wise in that respect, to kind of pay attention. And to recognize when an idea came in. There's even a session where somebody plays something by accident. Al DeLory plays something accidentally on one of the songs on Pet Sounds, and he stops the session and he says, "Wait a minute, what did you just do?" And he goes, "Oh, I don't know." And he says, "Well, it was something like this." And he said, "Oh, can you play that again?" And he tries to replay. He goes, "Yes, that's it, right there." And then they end up with that in the song. So I really do credit Brian for just having that. One, to have the imagination to come up with the tracks that he did, but also that trust in the musicians. And then when the guys, the other Beach Boys returned from the road, and him plugging them into the, on the vocals for the trust that he had in them as well.
Yeah. I mean, definitely a special quality to have, considering what music history has shared about band dynamics and how sometimes that can be a really fraught with peril situation. I'd love to talk about, if we could, last time we heard from you, you were in Fort Mill. I presume you're still there. Okay.
I'm Charlotte, not far away. Just about 7 miles. No, I moved to a bigger place, but I'm still pretty close.
Oh, gotcha. Well, welcome to Charlotte. Obviously, you've talked about the fact how you started as a super fan. You ended up in charge of the Endless Summer Quarterly. I alluded to this at the beginning of our conversation here, the fact that eventually you got to co-produce one of the more recent recordings. How did that come about, and what was that like in being able to work and have such a big rapport with the band?
Well, the first word that comes to mind is trust. It's something that there's all sorts of, cliches, I guess, that are coming to mind, and flowery, nice words, and they would be true. It's been a privilege to be in their company, and an honor to be able to be able to be in their company, whether it's over the phone, sitting with them, sharing dinner, you name it. And I'm still a super fan. But so that came about because in 1970, the group released an album called Sunflower. And people may not know that record off the top of their heads because it's not in the lexicon of greatest hits. But there's a song on there that I think most people know pretty well, and that's Forever. And that was written by the band's drummer, Dennis Wilson. It became popular again in the 80s because of John Stamos and Full House. But that's where that song is from. And I just reference that song so that you'll have kind of a reference point. Another song on that album is Add Some Music to Your Day. And I was working on the 50th anniversary edition of ESQ celebrating the 50th anniversary of the album Sunflower. And I interviewed the guys. I got interviews with Brian, Mike, Al, and Bruce Johnston. And I was looking at the album cover, and on the album cover, it's the Beach Boys with their kids sitting on a hill, which was actually Dean Martin's property, from what I understand. And it was interesting to me. I thought, oh gosh, look at these kids. They're all musical now. There's Carney, she's musical. Over here, there's Christian, that's Mike's son. He's musical. There's Haley, I think she's music. So it was kind of, my brain started working and thinking, I wonder, because this was summer of 2020, we were in the middle of the pandemic and everything was just, ground to a halt. And I just started thinking about, I wonder, since nobody's out doing anything, I wonder if I could kind of get some wheels turning on this idea to re-record this song. And then if I'm going to have everyone do that, what would it be for? Because it's just seemed to me to do something. If you're going to take the time to ask people to do something, then what's the end goal? What would we say? How could we do this to benefit someone? And by that time, I don't remember when he released it, but Mike Love had released a song called, I think, This Too Shall Pass, I think was the name of the song, and it was to benefit Feeding America. And so I thought, well, okay, they're America's band, Feeding America. That worked for me. And I just slowly started reaching out, and it seemed like there was enough interest there to do it. And musician extraordinaire Rob Bonfiglio, who's Carney Wilson's husband, he's just if he was born back in the 60s and lived in LA, he would have been one of the Wrecking Crew. He's so good. He can play anything. You ask him to do a song, he can play every instrument. He can do it all. So that's where we started. And Rob created the track, and he created demo vocals for everybody, like scratch vocals for everyone to listen to. And I'm in a church choir. I'm a first tenor in my church choir. So what was different for me was, number one, was that the Beach Boys' original recording didn't have any female vocals on it. So I had to think in terms of, okay, this isn't just tenor, because the Beach Boys are all tenors except for Mike Love, who can sing both tenor and bass. So I thought, okay, Carney and Wendy and Mike Love's daughters, Haley and Amba, I thought, okay, I have to listen to some of their music to understand whether they're altos or sopranos, and then whether or not they're soprano 1, soprano 2, alto 1, or alto 2, to kind of sort out where they would be best utilized vocally. So that kind of took some understanding, but it was so much fun to kind of delegate that to say, hey, how about this spot for you? And then them all being very excited to do it. And then Bruce Johnston, who joined the Beach Boys in 1965, left in early 70s and came back in 79, and he's been in the touring band with Mike ever since. He was great. He was kind of the producer's producer, for lack of a better way of putting it. He was so instrumental in helping me accomplish it. He would just kind of guide me. We'd talk on the phone, and he'd say, okay, well, you need the track, you need it to be in its original key. And then once I accomplished that with Rob, he said, okay, here's now what you should do next. And he kind of walked me through it great, because I was a morning show producer once at Magic Oldies 96, way back in the day, when I was on the corner of Kings and Moorhead. But I'd never undertaken anything like this. So it was a little different, but it was so much fun. And it was a great kind of diversion during the pandemic, because I think if I just sat through the pandemic like everyone else, it would have been very difficult for me. It was difficult for me, and I know that it was difficult for many people. So the whole goal became, how do we create a little joy? And So by the time we got into early 2021, the track had been completed. Everyone did their vocal parts. Rob did a great job of mixing it. And then somebody, I think around November 2020, somebody said, well, why don't you get a video together? And I had so much, it was quite a challenge, a welcome challenge, just to get everybody to do their vocal parts. And I thought, oh boy, I don't know. But everyone, again, when time permit, they all got to it, and they did it. And Brian's not on it, and we're talking about Brian passing away. If you were to watch the video, there's great. I'm gonna get sidetracked a little bit, going all the way back to when I started with Jan and Dean and the Beach Boys in the beginning, and how I discovered them. Mm-hmm. My youth minister at the time at St. John's Episcopal Church, where I now sing in the choir off Carmel Road, he got me into the Beach Boys too. He started turning me on to certain albums. To pay him back for that, I put him in the video. Mm. There's a lyric in the song the preacher adds to his psalms, and that's him, his father Paul Martin. I wanted to kind of thank him, so I put him in there. And I also, because Brian wasn't doing any recording at the time, I tried to figure a way to thank Brian visually, that if he saw the video, that he would feel, hopefully kind of a love letter, for lack of a better way of putting it. So his brothers are in there. There's a lyric that says, at a movie, you can feel it touching your heart. And we were able to use old footage of both Dennis and Carl. Mm. And that was just a great, a great way for me to incorporate visually everybody. So it was my hope that Brian did see the video. I don't know if he did. He wrote the song. He co-wrote the song with Mike. So again, it's another great example of a great song written by one of the greatest songwriters of our time. And so yeah, it was a love letter. My video, being able to put that video together, was my way of sending Brian a love letter. Because, I mean, I was talking to my buddy earlier about the Mount Rushmore of music icons. And we were saying, well, Brian would be on there for sure. And I said, well, wait a minute. I think Brian is just so great. I think Brian would be above the Mount Rushmore. And then you'd have the Paul McCartney and the Elton Johns and the Paul Simons, whoever else you would put on there. But I think Brian is still up here. And I think Paul McCartney would agree, because he's the one who said you're not musically educated until you get pet sounds. So there's kind of a consistency there with how great this guy is and how much he touched our lives. It's, I don't think you can, I use the word legacy today, past tense, because Brian just left us. I don't know if you can really implement the word legacy while you're still here. You probably can work it in some way, but I think Brian's legacy is, or at least a component of his legacy. I think his legacy is many things. I think one of the major components of his legacy is his ability to touch people through his music and how he communicated through music. Don Was, who worked with Brian a number of times, told me in an interview back in 2015, he said, that's the way you talk to Brian. You talk to Brian through music. Mm. That's how you communicate with him. There's a song on Brian's. I grabbed a couple of albums here. One I just want to recommend this record to everyone. Yeah. This is called Brian Wilson Reimagines Gershwin. This was released in 2010. Brian was contacted by the Gershwin estate. Now just consider that right there. Wow. The George and Ira Gershwin estate. He did a number of songs, and he completed 2 unfinished Gershwin songs. Wow. He completed them. And I got to tell you, this is worth every second. So it's Brian Wilson Reimagines Gershwin from 2010. I'm sure it's out there on streaming platforms. Check this out. And then the other one, where I was talking to John was this one called No Peer Pressure. I don't know if you can see that, but mm-hmm. No Peer Pressure. And it's a song on it, and the song is called The Last Song. And Don was talking to me about they had a filming crew there, and Don is playing the song, and he's playing the last song, and he's getting all kind of, choked up. And he said he's got snot coming out of his nose, and the camera's coming around filming him while he's trying to keep it together. Gosh. He said, Dave, it was just so difficult because they got cameras around you, and you're doing all you can to not be pulled into this message. Like, Brian literally wrote a song called The Last Song, and another song, I haven't listened to it quite yet today because I think maybe I'll cry.
Yeah.
In 2012, the Beach Boys did a reunion tour, and they put out the album, That's Why God Made the Radio. And one of the songs at the end of the album is called Summer's Gone, and Brian sings it. And it's very moving, and it's interesting. I know the official day of summer is June 21st, but I think from now on, the remainder of years that I'll be here, I think June 11th is going to be my first day of summer, because Brian changed so many lives. He and the Beach Boys, what they've done. It's again, I just think about, there is the surf culture, there's the car culture, there's the girls down on the beach culture, there's fun. I Get Around, all those wonderful, recognizable songs. But boy, oh boy, did he just changed. He changed me. You have to be born. You do. You're born with that type of thing. You don't learn it. You're born with it. And Brian was born with a really, really special gift. And everyone's life he touched through his music and through his expression. Yeah, through his expression. It's why we're talking about him. I mean, and why he's at the. I mean, they should. I don't know. If they erected a statue the same size as the Statue of Liberty and it was a Brian Wilson statue, I'd be okay with it. I mean, he's deserving. I mean, he's America. I mean, and again, I'm certainly not giving him all the credit, but he is the foundation of everything that kind of came out of that group. And there's another song, if anyone saw the movie Love and Mercy from 2015, great movie that starred Paul Dano and John Cusack as Brian in different phases of his life. Mm-hmm. That's a really good film. And the song Love and Mercy is something from Brian's 1988 first solo album. And it's a song that you referenced in my room earlier. I think Love and Mercy is a lot like that song. It's that Brian understanding sadness and trying to kind of rescue us with it, with his music, taking the sadness and writing and recording in such a way that we understand the sadness, we connect to the sadness, but we hear the intention, which is really more about celebrating life, as allowing your heart to be on full display and letting kind of. When I listen to that song, I feel like I'm listening to a flower bloom. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of his music does that.
David Beard, you've had so many wonderful insights for us tonight. Thank you. And really have given us a lot to think about as far as our playlist, too, going forward as folks try to think about Brian Wilson's legacy. Folks, check out Endless Summer Quarterly, of course, if you want more Beach Boys insights. And maybe we'll all be listening to a little bit more Beach Boys tonight in Brian's honor.
Oh, I hope so.
David, thanks for joining us here on Live Impact News. We definitely want to have you back.
Okay, I'd love to. Thanks.
And we are back out here live now in the Live Impact Studio on WCNC Plus. Thanks for joining us this morning, just after 10 o'clock on a Thursday morning. Busy now, the nation's capital. A couple of key people, testimonies this week, continuing for the third day. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth today now testifying before the House Armed Services Committee. The public is welcome here this morning, so it appears to be standing room only. The chair just laying out his opening statements and some real basic housekeeping rules that any outbursts of any kind, those person will ask to be to leave the room. So right now they are making some opening statements from some other committee members. Let's go ahead and turn to that live here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus.
So very disturbing and without explanation. There's been talk about 8% cuts across the board. Nobody on this committee knows what that means. Some of it is happening and has not been made transparent to us. Is it going to make us better? Is it part of a larger strategy? Nobody really knows. We also heard the plan to cut 20% of the flag officers. Again, no strategy, no plan. This is why the budget is so important. The budget can inform all of this. Maybe that's a good idea, but we have no idea because there is no transparency and no follow-through. Also, quite disturbingly, within the Department of Defense and also across the federal government, the one and only criteria that is consistent is loyalty to Trump, as opposed to loyalty to the law or loyalty to the Constitution. This started with one of the more shameful events in DoD history, and that's when we pulled security details from former members of the Pentagon who faced security threats. Why were those security details pulled? They weren't pulled because anything told us that they were safe. Chairman Milley is one great example. He was on the threat list because he carried out an order from President Trump, and rightfully so, to kill Soleimani in the Middle East. He's now on Iran's hit list, and we pulled his security detail, leaving him and his family vulnerable. Why? Because he had the audacity to say something critical of President Trump. I mean, that's just embarrassing. If you told me 10 years ago on this committee that something like that would have happened, I wouldn't have believed you. And now we have a dictate from the White House saying that all federal employees will be tested for whether or not they are supportive of President Trump. New York Times had a great headline on that saying, why does an air traffic controller have to be a Trump supporter? Well, I would ask, why does an acquisition professional have to be a Trump supporter? If you're focused on loyalty, you're not focused on competency, you're not focused on ability, and it is the wrong way to go. Even within the budget, we see the influence of the president over the influence of common sense. We've all heard about the Golden Dome. When I first heard about the Golden Dome, it was interesting because it reminded me of a joke I first told about 12 years ago when we were dealing with a large number of Pentagon programs that were more ambitious than practical. Future combat systems, the expeditionary fighting vehicle. You know, basically they had, well, this is what we want. And we had this joke that, well, all I want is sharks with freaking laser beams attached to them. That became the armed services thing. I actually have a little plastic shark that my staff made for me with a laser beam attached to it. Making the perfect the enemy of the good is a problem. And nobody on this committee knows what Golden Dome is. And the other thing that's really important about this, contained within that is one of the most important national security threats that we face. Missile defense and counter-drone. We have a lot of programs that people are working on in that direction. What happens to those programs when we take $25 billion towards a project that no one can explain and no one can understand? And again, we don't have a budget, so we're taking it on faith. That's deeply troubling. Equally troubling is the Air Force One airplane that we got from Qatar. There's all kinds of ethics problems with that, which I'll leave aside for the moment. But that airplane is going to have to be fitted to be Air Force One. It's going to cost hundreds of millions of dollars. Again, no transparency. We're not told what that's going to cost and where it's going to go. But because President Trump wanted it, he gets it. Hundreds of millions of dollars goes out the window. We don't have the capacity to sort of say, sorry, sir, that's not a good idea. And the last one on this list is one that, frankly, I had a hard time believing when I first heard it. Apparently, the president has decided that the F-35 would be a better plane if it had 2 engines. And to a certain degree, it's hard to argue with. I guess 2 engines is better than 1, except that you can't just add a second engine to the F-35. This is a program that's taken us over 25 years, and we are, knock on wood, finally to the point where we're going to have the plane. And I would have thought this would have been dismissed, but I hear defense contractors, Pentagon, they're looking at this idea. It is okay to tell the boss that he's wrong. We all have dumb ideas. It's good to have people around us who have the capability and the competency to say, no, we're not going to do that. We're walking down the wrong direction. In terms of the global strategy, I substantially agree with the chairman, except that I fear that, America first does mean America alone. We've seen that in a number of different issues, certainly placing tariffs on absolutely every country in the world, irrespective of our relationships. Well, sorry, except for Russia. Didn't place tariffs on Russia. That alienates people. Cutting off foreign aid programs, which I realize is not the purview of the Department of Defense, but I'll remind you of something that Secretary Gates said before this committee. If you're going to cut off the State Department, you better give me more ammunition. The two things are related. We stopped programs that were feeding hungry children in Africa. Literally took food out of the mouths of hungry children. Why? Apparently because there were a couple of USAID programs that supported LGBTQ programs. Now, why we didn't just cut those instead of cutting the ones that were feeding hungry children in Africa, I don't know, but that really sends the wrong message to the rest of the world. And the last one, and once we get to the Q&As, I would be curious to hear what the Secretary has to say about this. Threatening to use military force to invade Greenland and Panama. I don't believe the President has actually threatened military force against Canada just yet. He's just threatened to annex it. So Denmark, Canada, Panama, three peaceful nations that we are allies with, or were anyway. The message that sends to the rest of the world is one that the U.S. is purely in it for itself and does not care about the rest of the world. And this has implications. We're trying to stop China. We are in a global competition with China. We have built up excellent partnerships across Asia over the course of the last 6 or 7 years, in Australia, in Japan, in India, and the Philippines. Largely, that was because China exercised economic coercion. They went ballistic on Australia for daring to suggest that China could be more transparent about COVID, and Australia recalculated. Now we are the ones using economic coercion on our partners and allies and pushing them away. And this filters back over to Ukraine, where I am in violent agreement with the chairman about how important Ukraine is to our national security interests. And I also agree with the Secretary. We need to get peace in Ukraine. The longer that war continues, the more dangerous it is for everybody. But the administration made a crucial mistake at the start by showing weakness to Vladimir Putin and fundamentally misunderstood the war. Actually put out quotes that bought into the notion that Ukraine was somehow responsible for the war, even though Russia was the one who invaded. And Putin saw that signal. He saw that big green light and knew if he just waited a little while, we would abandon our allies, we would abandon our partners, and we'd abandon Ukraine. The president promised to end the war in Ukraine on day one. Now, admittedly, that was a moronic thing to say, and he wasn't ever going to do it. But well over 100 days in, the war is going stronger than ever. Putin is attacking more aggressively than he ever has, because President Trump sent him the message, we're walking away, it's all yours. We need to change that message. Ukraine can defend itself and we can get to peace, but not if we don't make it clear that we're going to keep the 53-nation alliance together and that we're actually going to defend Ukraine going forward. The other part of this that is deeply disturbing is apparently if policy isn't going well, the solution to it is to just act like it is. In the Middle East, you hear the president, peace through strength is back, everything's fine, we're all doing well, but just like in Ukraine, when the president took office, there was a ceasefire in Gaza. Now that war is going stronger than ever. The humanitarian crisis is growing. Israel is continuing to attack in Lebanon and Syria. Yemen is still a problem. Yes, for the moment, they have stopped attacking U.S. ships, but President Biden went through that as well. Attacked Yemen from time to time, they stood down and they stood back up, and now we are dangerously close to that conflict spreading to Iran. Do not misunderstand me. I do not blame President Trump for that, all right? But to stand up and say it's all solved because I'm president and to not be engaged and figure out how to solve it, just to imagine that you can create the factual world that you want just with your words is an incredibly, incredibly dangerous thing. The last issue that I want to talk about is the issue around DEI, because I am deeply disturbed about what the Pentagon is doing in this direction. And keep in mind, I say that as someone, I didn't love the excesses of the DEI programs they put in place. I live with them out in the Seattle-King County area. I think there were a lot of mistakes behind that. But instead of addressing that in a sensible way, we've decided to go at it with a right-wing cultural war. with a sort of right-wing cultural revolution that frankly would make Chairman Mao proud. We are banning books, we are pulling images down off of the website, leading to some just sort of ridiculous things. There was, of course, the instance when all reference to the Enola Gay disappeared for a few days. Now that's kind of funny because in that context, gay means something different. But why do we care if the word gay that means homosexual is printed somewhere? Why is that threatening to us? Why are we spending time on that instead of, I don't know, giving us a budget that might have been more productive? And then we're pulling books off the shelves, which led to one really amusing outcome where someone said in one particular library within the Pentagon, you could not find a copy of Jackie Robinson's biography. That had been pulled. But you could find 2 copies of Mein Kampf. So it's interesting, I guess, well, you got to have 2 because if one's checked out, somebody needs something to do. Why are we doing that? And now we've got the changes to the names. And this changing the names of ships, going back to the original names of the Confederacy for all of our military bases, a lot of different things can be said about this, but I just want to close by drawing one particular contrast, and that's about Medgar Evers, who is actually a personal hero of mine. I read his wife's book when I was a freshman in college, and it inspired me. My son's middle name is Evers. We are talking about pulling Medgar Evers' name off of a ship. Now, this is a man who served in the military, but also he stood up to Jim Crow, white supremacy, and racism in the South. And I know we're focused on the warrior ethos. If you don't think that it took a warrior ethos to do that in Mississippi in the 1950s and the 1960s, then you're just not paying attention. Why?
All right, everyone, we're going to take a little break from that and bring you a live picture right now of a crash that is affecting traffic along I-77. Looking at a live picture now from DOT cameras. This wreck occurring on the southbound side. There in the distance, you could see the edge of an orange cab from a big rig. So that is blocking the left lane. DOT says it's clear, but we obviously can see the backups and the flashing lights with that at least one trooper or police unit just behind it. So a wreck there blocking the left lane. Hopefully they'll get that onto a tow truck shortly. In the meantime, expect huge delays. Had a look at a map here, South 77 towards Remount Road, so north of, or make that south of Uptown. Yep. The backup is going to be solid through Uptown, well before 277. I'm saying even towards 85.
Yeah.
So 77 is terrible. Anyway.
Especially at that exit 8 and 9, I drive past it
all the time.
All the time.
Right.
Like, that's the one you go to 277 to Uptown. Like, it's it's a mess anyway.
Yeah. So
any time of the day, you're usually, unless you're in the middle of the night, it's kind of a mess.
Right. No kidding. So again, this is on the southbound side. We can see the northbound side has its own share of rubbernecking. So northbound side looks like that is already jammed up well before. Not Remount Road, even well before, like maybe Tyvola, if not even coming up from 485 and from Carowinds. And then the southbound side, again, barely moving down from, well through Uptown. So if you're expecting anyone from a trip or whatever, we can see folks walking across the interstate.
Yeah.
They're blocking lanes at times to try and position the wrecker to get the rig out of the way, as you can see there. So now traffic squeezing by on the far right lane, and that is a process. So until this absolutely clears, it is going to be just one of those nightmarish rides. Slow go, stop and go.
Stop and go.
Bumper to bumper.
Yep.
At 10:20 on a Thursday morning. So hopefully that will be cleared out of here soon. In the meantime, just want to let you know about that. We'll get you back.
Keep it on the screen too. We'll put it in the 3 box.
Okay, perfect. All right, very good. So we'll keep that on, and we'll get you back out to D.C. because I believe Secretary Hegseth is expected to make his opening remarks in front of the Housing Committee for the Armed Services, testifying for the Department of Defense fiscal year 2026 budget. This is his 3rd day of testimony in front of different committees and lawmakers at our nation's capital. You're watching Live Impact News on WCNC+.
Fiscal year 2026 budget for the Department of Defense. I'm honored to testify today alongside General Dan Kane, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and Bryn McDonald, who's performing the duties of DoD's Comptroller and Chief Financial Officer. We are very proud to represent and serve our warriors and their families. And today, as they do every day, they're keeping America safe. They're defending our homeland. They're standing up to Communist China. They're working hand in glove with our allies and partners. They are achieving peace through strength. I'd like to start today by thanking this committee and Congress for your bipartisan leadership to give our troops a big pay raise in 2025. This included an additional 10.5% raise for our junior enlisted service members, E1 to E4. Thank you also for supporting other initiatives that improve the quality of life for our warriors and their families. With a focus on our troops and their loved ones, we have directed additional actions that will further improve their quality of life. These include making historic investments in this budget to improve living conditions in barracks and base housing, reforming the PCS process to reduce the cost and stress of moves for military families, and improving the quality of the care provided by our defense healthcare system. The best part of our job is meeting and interacting with troops and their families. We hear their concerns. I know how it feels to face these challenges. I've been there recently. Each of these initiatives responds to feedback we have received from the force. We will keep listening and keep looking for ways to improve their quality of life. Under President Trump's leadership, this budget puts America first and gives our warriors what they need. The $961 billion budget request, more than $1 trillion in total for national security, ends 4 years of chronic underinvestment in our military. Now, as is customary with first-year administration budget releases, additional time was necessary to implement this president's initiatives. In the last 4 months, we've moved quickly to reverse course after 4 years of weakness and mismanagement. In that 8% exercise, we found nearly $30 billion in savings across the department, which we reinvested. We killed wasteful programs, targeted bureaucratic excess, and redirected funding from Biden-era priorities to President Trump's priorities. Working with the Department of Homeland Security, we have increased border security. We reduced China's malign influence in our hemisphere. We defended freedom of navigation in the Red Sea. However, we still have a lot of work ahead of us to achieve peace through strength, a lot of deferred maintenance to catch up on. To carry out the President's mission, we have set 3 priorities for the department: restore the warrior ethos, rebuild our military, and reestablish deterrence. First, we are restoring the warrior ethos. President Trump charged me to focus relentlessly on warfighting, lethality, meritocracy, standards, and readiness, and that is exactly what we've done since day one. We are refocusing on what is truly important, which is warfighting and our warriors, sweeping away distractions and bureaucracy. We are setting standards that are high, equal, and unwavering. DEI is dead. We replaced it with a colorblind, gender-neutral, merit-based approach. Our force is responding incredibly to these changes. Because of President Trump and his America First priorities, recruitment and retention under this administration are higher than they've been in decades. Historic numbers of young Americans are putting on the uniform and raising their right hand because they believe in the leadership they see. This budget provides a historic level of funding for military readiness, putting our warfighters and their needs first. Second, we are rebuilding our military. 25 years ago, our military was unchallenged. Yet we squandered that advantage as China carried out an unprecedented military buildup. President Trump, as he did in his first term, is correcting those mistakes. And we're doing this by, as was mentioned multiple times, reviving our defense industrial base, reforming our acquisitions process and working with Congress to do so, and rapidly fielding emerging technologies and new weapons so our warfighters can meet the challenges of an evolving nature of warfare. This budget invests $25 billion in Golden Dome for America, a down payment on President Trump's priority to defend our homeland. It also commits more than $62 billion to modernize and sustain our nuclear forces as we face rising nuclear dangers. The budget allocates $3.5 billion for the F-47, the world's first sixth-generation air superiority fighter. The budget will also revitalize our shipbuilding industrial base with $6 billion in funding in FY26, bringing it to $47 billion in total we request for shipbuilding, after neglect from the previous administration. The budget also significantly increases funds to buy next-generation technologies that we need now and into the future: autonomous systems, long-range drones, long-range fires, and hypersonics. We will put these capabilities in the hands of our military. These steps will help us remain the strongest and most lethal fighting force in the world for generations to come. And third, we are reestablishing deterrence. When an opponent sees our well-equipped and tough-as-nails warriors, they will decide that today is not the day to test U.S. resolve. Credible deterrence starts at home. It starts with securing our borders. We will achieve 100% operational control of our southern border, and to that end, illegal crossings under the Trump administration have decreased 99.9%. The Indo-Pacific is our priority theater, and China is our pacing threat. That's why I've traveled to the Indo-Pacific twice already to visit our forces and meet with allies and partners. As we shift our focus to the Indo-Pacific, President Trump looks to our allies and partners to be force multipliers alongside the United States, and we are making progress on those fronts. We applaud allies who are stepping up, but others need to do more, and they need to do it quickly. And at the NATO Heads of State meeting later this month, we expect our NATO allies to commit to 5% of GDP on defense and defense-related investments, something that was almost inconceivable before President Trump led the charge in his first administration and continues in this one. As the President has rightly pointed out, it is only fair that our allies and partners do their part. We can't want their security more than they do. The Department of Defense is executing a common-sense agenda to achieve peace through strength. The threats we face are serious. Our investments to counter them must also be. That's what this budget does. It matches capabilities to threats. While we long for peace, we prepare for war, and we must overcome decades of neglect and decline. We must fortify our position as the world's most lethal fighting force, and that means acting fast as our opponents are. This committee is our critical partner in everything we do, and we appreciate your leadership and oversight. We look forward to accomplishing these goals, to achieving peace through strength, to supporting our warriors, to protecting our citizens and our taxpayers. Together with you, may God grant us the wisdom to see what is right and the courage to do it. Thank you.
I thank the Secretary. General Kane, you're recognized for 5 minutes to summarize your opening statement.
Chair Rogers, thank you, sir. Ranking Member Smith, other members of the committee, I'm honored to join the Secretary here today and Ms. Bryn McDonald to appear before you to testify on the President's FY26 budget. Today's hearing reflects our shared commitment to maximize efficiency, accountability, and lethality and survivability through the investments that you make in us. Ensuring every expenditure increases the survivability of the joint force and providing our warfighters the advanced capabilities, cutting-edge technologies required to dominate our adversaries at scale.
We're going to take a little bit of a reprieve there from Hegseth, Secretary Hegseth's testifying, as well as the General, in front of the House Armed Services Committee on Capitol Hill. Want to talk right now at 10:30 here on a Thursday morning, third day of mandatory mini camp for the Carolina Panthers, getting ready here in the off season for the upcoming season, because that's what hard workers do. Heroes don't wear capes, they wear pads, shoulder pads, and helmets. Our Danielle Stein covering things right now on day 3 in Uptown Charlotte. How's it going, Danielle?
It's going great so far. As you mentioned, yeah, day 3, a lot of hard work we've been seeing as this Panthers team is trying to do everything they can before they go on a little bit of a summer break before things really start to ramp up. So the guys are all out there trying to get those really good first impressions from the coaching staff and make sure they're leaving it out on the field. So when they come back a little bit later on for preseason and training camp, they will be as prepped and ready to go. That especially goes for the rookies. I talked to tight end Mitchell Evans, one of those rookies, and he was talking to me about how it is all about learning and consuming as much information as you possibly can at this time so that when you come back you'll be ready to go. Mitchell's actually coming into the NFL with a little bit of an interesting background, having played running back, quarterback, and now tight end. He hopes that he has a unique perspective on the offense, and with his experience he hopes all of that is going to lend itself to what he told me he wants to become in being one of the greats.
Yeah, because I feel like that's the mentality you got to have to be great. I have those values. I have that vision for myself. You know, down the line, I want to be great. I want to be remembered as one of the greats. So to do that and to be remembered for that, you got to put in extra work outside of the slot of time. I know there's requirements for a certain amount of time a day, whatever. You know, you got to do more than that if you want to be where you want to be.
All right, Danielle. So, I mean, how do rookies like Mitchell, how do they try to break through the roster?
Yeah, of course it's always hard for rookies. Some people, like we can expect T-Mac, Teteroa, McMillan to probably make more of an immediate impact. Not everyone gets that same sort of opportunity. In terms of Mitchell, though, it's a little bit of an interesting situation in that tight end room right now. So the starting tight end that we've been seeing, Tommy Tremble, right now he is out. He is dealing with back surgery in his recovery. We are not expecting to see him until the start of the season. So during these mini camp times and these off-season workouts, it has been Mitchell and Jatavion Sanders who have been getting those reps at tight end. So the coaching staff is getting a little bit more of a heightened look at the tight end coming out of Notre Dame, maybe that they wouldn't have necessarily seen. So Mitchell is doing everything he can to make those good impressions like we were talking about, learning as much as he can. While that number 1 tight end is out, he's really trying to maximize the opportunities that he has right now as they're going into the 3rd day of minicamp.
Sounds all promising for Carolina Panthers. Danielle Stein out there in front of Bank of America Stadium as the action picks up before they go on a longer break. Thanks, Danielle. We'll see you later.
Thank you.
All right, good stuff out of Uptown Charlotte. Let's get you back out to Capitol Hill now with the opening statements for Hegseth, Secretary of Defense Hegseth's testimony in front of the House Armed Services Committee on Live Impact News on WCNC+.
As ever known. I assure this committee that the force remains ready, capable to defend this nation, but we've got some work to do. With your continued support and prudent investment, we will maintain our competitive edge, strengthen our advantage, and ensure that our men and women in uniform are equipped with the right capability. I also remain thoughtful of those currently deployed right now and their families who stand the watch around the world, quietly serving to do our nation's work so that we can be here in this room right now. And I also hold a special remembrance for our fallen and their families who continue to show us every day what real courage and tenacity looks like. I thank the Congress and this committee for your support and collaboration in our shared commitment to deliver peace through strength. I look forward to your questions, and again, I'm honored to be here.
I thank the witnesses, and I now recognize myself for the first questions. Secretary Hegseth, you know, you've talked with me about this. We both know the President has a peace through strength agenda, and he's serious about it. And as I have talked to you about this, we are at the lowest level of defense spending as a nation in 80 years, and that has got to change. And I think that you and the President have sent a strong signal about wanting to get after that and change it with this year's proposed spending that includes the reconciliation package, which will put us over $1 trillion. It's a great first step. But as you and I both know, it's a 1 year. We're going to have to see continued funding, in my opinion, and growth in that top line in the out years. Do you share that opinion?
Well, Mr. Chairman, the baseline of our planning process for FY26 was working with our partners in OSD and the COCOMs and elsewhere, identifying the threats that exist, the priorities of the administration, and what we need to spend to make sure we have those capabilities. And that was a reorientation from the previous approach of the previous administration. So that included exercises where we looked at reductions, where we could reinvest those into different priorities. So when you look at the two bills in one budget that add up to $961 billion and over $1 trillion, truly a historic investment, 13% increase, that was our statement to the President of what we think we need in order to spend and invest in ways that are postured for now and into the future. And what I would commit to you and to this committee is that in FY27 and 28 and 29, in this administration, we will perform the same exercise, knowing that threats, we believe that the policies of this administration will lead to peace and more opportunities. But as our adversaries continue to increase their capabilities and we learn about what's happening on the battlefield, that will lead to commensurate increases in ours. So we anticipate through that review that there probably will be increases, but I wouldn't put a number to it in the future.
Thank you. I just share the President's commitment that every NATO member nation should reach 5% of its GDP, and that includes us. And I think we can do it by the end of this President's term, and I'm determined to help him get there. Secretary Hickseth, at the President's direction, you're developing a plan on reforms of DoD acquisition. Just so happens we are too. You may have heard of the SPEED Act. It's a bipartisan, bicameral effort. As you develop your plan, what problems have you identified with acquisition reform that need attention?
Well, our new A&S, Undersecretary for A&S was just confirmed. Mike Duffy, he's doing a fantastic job. He's diving right into this to include the SPEED Act, which we're reviewing in real time, that identifies a lot of the same problems we have. Streamlining processes, consolidating. We need competition and actual new entrants into acquisitions in a stale process. It's too bureaucratic. There are too many gatekeepers. Too many programs are gold-plated, which add to cost overruns, and they're late to need. So throughout the entire process, we've reached out to industry and to innovators and to outside-the-box thinkers and said, what would you do? How have you looked at this problem? To include this committee, how would you attack this so that we can get what we need in the hands of warfighters faster? It's unacceptable in this real-time world we live in, where you've got off-the-shelf and off-the-shelf capabilities and open architecture opportunities, and you can do virtual design of products that you don't have to build a hard copy, that we're not doing it faster. So everything necessary we want, and we're going as fast as we can.
Great, thank you. General Kane, as you know, there's been a lot of dialogue around here about selling off some of our spectrum. Can you talk to us about the importance of preserving the spectrum around the lines that the DoD uses?
You bet, sir. Spectrum is a critical part of our warfighting enablers, and as the administration and the Congress carefully consider the slices that we must preserve, there are certain areas within that my military advice to the Secretary and others is to hang on to that. I'm grateful that the deputy has been really leading this effort with the Congress and to sort of measure risk. I understand that economic security is also national security, so the truth is always somewhere in the middle, but there are some segments in the lower end that frankly, I would strongly recommend we preserve and protect for defense matters.
I raise that because I want you to know we're going to be taking our cues from you, and if you're against it, I'm going to be against it. With that, I'll yield my time, or yield back and recognize the ranking member.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just on the budget point, and I made this point before the committee before, the House just passed a budget that adds nearly $3 trillion to an already out-of-control debt. So if we do really want to spend money on defense or anywhere else, we got to be willing to pay for it. And I this certainly go back through generations of bipartisan problems with this.
All right, we're going to break away from that here for a minute and bring you some breaking news. Heads up on I-85 northbound. Big mess here. A northbound crash at Tuckasegee Road, reported by NCDOT. A big rig ran into the bridge, and as you could see, that is the right side of the trailer that looks like it's just been peeled back like a sardine can, and the debris it left or whatever its load all over the place. So as you can imagine, it's going to take a while for things to be cleaned up here, hitting just underneath the bridge, one of those support columns, and maybe it was the cab that hit underneath the bridge. So, wow, what a big mess. And this reported by, again, NCDOT. They posted at 9:22, so an hour and 20 minutes ago. And this is what it looks like right now. So something to keep in mind as it looks like lanes are open, but you could see crews on scene with all of those flashing lights, and the rig still toppled kind of on its side, leaning against some of those pillars underneath the support bridge, North 85 at Tuckasegee Road, and they're going to have to tow this out of the way, unload its contents. It's going to be there for a while. Something to keep in mind as delays are they don't seem to be too bad. As you get closer to the wreckage, you can see traffic flowing somewhat smoothly, but something to keep in mind as we get into maybe afternoon drive, if this is still with us. Sometimes it takes crews a long time to maybe investigate or clean things up.
Looks like there's a lot of debris that's
yeah, I mean, there's so much to sweep up,
Yeah.
offload the content again, like I said, and so, again, heads up for you there. Busy day on our interstates. 85 at Tuckasegee Road. Yes, 85 and 77 really seeing the brunt of some trouble spots this morning. All right, we're going to put that in a box to keep an eye on while we go back to the Hegseth testimony in front of the House Armed Services Committee this morning on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus.
Department. Interesting to use the word gold in this particular context, but yes, I agree with you, actually.
We maybe could use a little bit more silver plating on occasion. A recognition that the 99% solution is oftentimes the enemy of the 85% solution that delivers 2 years sooner. And that's contractors and other companies wanting to do right, but trying to do too much and overpromise, and then they're under-delivering. The warfighters
not always wanting to do right. In some cases, just
not
wanting,
always,
just
not
wanting
always.
to make money.
So,
but yes,
the change is also in acquisitions about people. You need reformers in these positions. I'm here to be a disruptor of those processes. Our deputy secretary has extensive business experience. The types of people we're bringing in as undersecretaries have been disruptors and innovators in the private sector who recognize that bureaucracy can be dysfunctional and needs to be disrupted. So it's taking outside the box unique approaches. I mean, virtual design is a big example. How many times are we going to build something physically that takes a year to build when you could use AI and computing power, design it virtually, identify the flaws, and move more quickly, or create open architecture so you can move
our committee stands ready to work with you.
I mean, there's 500 different things we can do, and we're doing them.
Yeah, and I'm sincerely concerned about this. Is it the policy of the Department of Defense that we need to be prepared to take Greenland and Panama by force if necessary? Is this a policy that you have within the Department of Defense in accordance with the President's wishes?
I heard what you said about those two countries and saying we need to worry about China. Well, we are worried about China.
That wasn't my concern.
China's malign influence in Panama.
I was concerned with us
China has control of
using military force to take another sovereign country's territory.
We should pay attention to that.
Right.
So Panama is very key terrain that we've focused on, and we've been willing to focus on, as is Greenland.
We should take it by military force. They're important. I'm not going to argue with that.
The Arctic is
incredibly
important.
I'm arguing with the using our military to take it by force.
Our job at the DOD is to have plans. And
do you have a plan for that?
Our job at the Defense Department is to have plans for any particular contingency.
Including the contingency of basically
any contingency
Denmark.
You need, we've got it. We've got a building full of planners, and we're prepared to give recommendations whenever needed.
So just be clear, you have plans to take Panama and Greenland by force if necessary.
I think the American people would want the Pentagon to have plans for any particular contingency.
Not for that.
Thankfully, we are in the planning business.
Speaking on behalf of the American people, I don't think the American people voted for President Trump because they were hoping we would invade Greenland. I'm going to go out on a limb on that one. I yield back.
Gentleman from South Carolina, Mr. Wilson is recognized.
Thank you very much, Chairman Mike Rogers, for your visionary leadership. And indeed, each witness, thank you for your service to America. And in particular, Mr. Secretary, your service is so appreciated, and I'm especially grateful as the son of a flying tiger who helped liberate China, as the father of 4 sons who have served in Iraq, Egypt, Italy, and Afghanistan, and as a 31-year Army veteran myself. Your leadership for peace through strength is crucial. And I believe we're in a Cold War we did not choose, of dictators with rule of gun invading democracies with rule of law. It began with war criminal Putin invading Ukraine on February 24, 2022, and then Iranian puppets invading Israel on October 7, 2023, with the Chinese Communist Party threatening Taiwan. President Trump tried to deter war criminal Putin in his first term with Javelin missiles to Ukraine, American troops in Poland, and stopping Nord Stream 2. But Putin ignored Trump, and defying Biden has continued his efforts. Upon election of Trump, there were hopes for peace, but Putin insulted Trump with the murderous attacks at Christmas and New Year's. Every time President Trump tries to reduce the conflict, war criminal Putin increases mass murder of drones and missile attacks on the people and civilians of Ukraine, including hospitals this week. War criminal Putin is clearly fixated to resurrect the failed Soviet Union, with troops still in Transnistria of Moldova, rigging elections in Belarus, invading the Republic of Georgia, and rigging elections against the legitimate President Salome Zurishvili of Georgia. Additionally, there have been new threats this week against the Baltic republics, our NATO allies. Every outreach by Trump has been mocked by Putin. With that in mind, an incredible achievement of President Trump is to awaken our NATO allies, now including Sweden and Finland, that with Germany pledging now 5% remarkably, and 17 of our allies now provide a larger GDP support for the people of Ukraine than the United States because of President Trump's encouragement. What is the latest status on encouraging our NATO allies of providing for peace through strength?
Thank you for the question, sir. The one thing I would take issue with is the characterization that Vladimir Putin ignored President Trump. I think Vladimir Putin paid a lot of attention to President Trump in his first term, and that's why the invasion did not happen under President Trump's watch. Instead, under the weakness and perceived weakness of Joe Biden.
Ignored and proceeded to
He paid attention under President Trump, and then when Joe Biden was in the office.
It really set the stage, sadly, that if he had really appreciated what President Trump was trying to do, he wouldn't have invaded again, but whether Biden's president or not.
But to your question about Europe,
yes,
President Trump has invigorated a truly historic investment amongst NATO allies to shoulder the burden of the defense of the continent of Europe. Vladimir Putin saw what he believed to be weakness, and I believe President Trump has stood up to that by reminding our allies that they need to spend on their own defense and ensure that they're able to shoulder the burden to defend the continent. That's been a good development.
And indeed, I was grateful last February coming back from the Organization of Security and Cooperation in Europe and meeting with the President, and I told him how exciting it was to see our allies understand that indeed he supports Ukraine, he supports NATO and peace through strength. And General Kane, I particularly appreciate your VMI credentials of professionalism, and with that in mind, we understand that even today, the International Atomic Energy Agency has declared Iran in breach of non-proliferation agreements, and what are we doing to deter the aggression coming from Iran?
Well, sir, first I noticed in your bio that you went to that other school in Lexington, which is always hard for me to get my head around, sir.
Hey, I grew up in the holy city of Charleston. When I saw Vimis, I thought they were Citadel cadets.
Yes, sir. I'm now a joint guy, so I'll keep all those comments to myself, sir.
Here.
You know, sir, throughout, you know, the IAEA report is certainly troubling. The international community seems to be thinking about what they're going to do about it, and as are we watching this situation develop and carefully monitoring the report.
Gentleman's time's expired.
America's in good hands with your
Connecticut, Mr. Courtney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary, this morning, the eyes of our closest allies, UK and Australia, are on your department as a result of Undersecretary of Policy Eldridge Colby's announcement that last night that he's launching a 30-day review of the trilateral AUKUS mission. I would just note that it's not just their eyes, it's our eyes in this committee. In 2023, by a vote of 310 to a small minority, we passed the AUKUS authorities and followed up on that in terms of AUKUS investments in the billions of dollars into our submarine industrial base. Australia has reciprocated, as you know, with its own investments in our submarine industrial base. And since then, since 2023, what we've seen that the three countries working together, that we now have well over 100 Australian sailors and naval officers that have gone through joint training. I've seen them in my district at graduation ceremonies. They're joint crewing. Virginia-class submarines. We also have joint U.S.-Australian submarine repair work that's happening in Guam and Hawaii. And our submarine industrial base last year delivered 2 Virginia-class attack submarines. They're New Jersey and Iowa. This year it'll be Massachusetts and Idaho. And the year following, it's going to be Arkansas and the Utah are going to be delivered during that 3-year period. General Kane, how many nuclear-powered attack submarines is in the Chinese Navy? Do you know that answer?
It's nuclear-powered attack boats.
Yes.
I mean, it's
how many attack?
Yes, sir.
Nuclear-powered.
Many. I'll get you.
No. Well, the answer is 6.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so what we've seen in the industrial base is that last year, this year, and next year, we're going to be delivering that identical number. They're building a 7th. You can check the Wall Street Journal, and you can see where that boat ended up at the bottom of the Yangtze River because of their inability to actually do the hard work of building nuclear-powered submarines, which is probably one of the most complex undertakings in really industry of any sort. Again, the Australians are investing in Perth, and so that we are going to have rotations of Virginia-class submarines that are already started to happen. Admiral Paparo testified in vocal support of AUKUS when he came before this committee just a few weeks ago. And again, I would just say, you know, there is nothing wrong with reviewing any program. We're all accountable. Anything of this magnitude certainly deserves review. But a 30-day review on a project that really took years to develop, in which this committee was instrumental in terms of enabling. And in my opinion, China's reaction to AUKUS is the ultimate sort of endorsement of AUKUS because they hate it. And the one commitment I would ask, Mr. Secretary, is just your commitment that this committee in Congress is going to be integrally involved in whatever the review process is, because we have skin in the game, we have history, and we have allies who really are, again, issuing statements this morning. The Prime Minister of England, Stephen Lovegrove, the Special Representatives for AUKUS, Richard Marles, putting out statements trying to reassure their countries that the U.S. is still going to follow through on this commitment. And we want that reassurance as well from you. Can you, again, give us that commitment that Congress will be involved in this review process? And I have one more follow-up question.
As it has been, Congress will be involved, but I've had an ongoing review myself. I've spent a great deal of time, Marles and Healy at the Australia and UK.
And I've been following your work
reviewing it myself. Secretary Colby's reviewing it. Okay. We know that. It's all important to make sure it fits our needs.
State Department, by the way, has skin in the game too, and they should be involved in it as well. I just want to reiterate Mr. Rogers' point and Mr. Smith's point. If we really care about strengthening the industrial base, we need to have procurement stability, which means we need to have a budget, a real budget, not a $20 billion shipbuilding budget, which Senator Wicker just eviscerated a couple of days ago That's $17 billion less than the last Biden shipbuilding budget. That's what got sent over to us. And again, that's the way, and I represent a district that is the general contractor for both programs. You want to strengthen hiring, supply chain, and facility growth. You need to have procurement stability. That's not what we're seeing from the Office of Management and Budget. I yield back.
Chair, and I recognize the gentleman from Ohio, Mr. Turner.
Mr. Secretary, thank you for your written statement, and also thank you for your recognition of the importance of our nuclear deterrent, and specifically our investment in our modernization of our nuclear deterrent. We are behind, as you know, in the modernization of our nuclear stockpile. Your recognition of our investment in our triad and our command and control is incredibly important. Thank you also for your recognition of the importance of our future investment in missile defense and the importance that the Golden Dome will play. The Secretary General of NATO has recently made statements of his concern of Russia's future attempt to place an anti-satellite nuclear weapon into space. Specifically, he has said, "We are aware of reports that Russia is examining the possibility of placing nuclear weapons in space. This is very worrying. Space is also very important for our deterrence and defense, just as important as land, sea, air, and cyberspace. In recent years, space has become increasingly clouded, dangerous, and unpredictable. We know that competition in space is fierce. I recently had the opportunity to speak to him. He was at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in my community as we were commemorating the 30th anniversary of the Peace Accords. His concern was that this is not getting worldwide enough of attention. We had General Saltzman recently in front of the committee. He has characterized that if Russia were to place an anti-satellite nuclear weapon into space, that would be day zero, that if that was put in space, that next day, that it would be irresponsible for us to count on space, that we would have to spend trillions of dollars and seek technology that we don't have to find solutions as an alternative to space, both commercially, for military, in really to redo what is really society today. As you know, it would affect both our nuclear deterrence.
All right, we have to break away from the Hegseth testimony on one of our House panels there this morning because Charlotte Today is coming up at 11 o'clock. Thanks for joining us here. We will continue to stream also a very important story that our Miles Harris is covering.